Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Commitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And this week, we are heading into the summer of 1989 as we take a trip to Cambridge, Massachusetts to visit MIT for the 49th Annual Puppetry Festival, which took place from July 9th through July 15th, 1989. But really, it's one particular night that we are interested in, and that is the evening with Jim Henson and Frank Oz, which we are lucky enough to get to see because it was later released on VHS in 1993.
Oh, wide release? That's not just in the archives of Puppeteers of America or something
Well,
like that.
I wouldn't say wide release. I think it became available from the Puppeteers.
You could go to your local library, perhaps, and get an
probably
interlibrary
definitely
loan.
Library, and maybe some sort of send in a postcard with a self-addressed stamped envelope and $25, and we'll send you back a VHS tape of Frank Oz talking for a long time.
Yeah. Matt, one thing we didn't talk about was that there was a picture released of Gaffer the Cat.
Oh, yes.
From the new Muppet Show production, which I guess to me really verified one thing, which is that this is going to be like a one-to-one recreation of the Muppet Show, I suppose.
It does seem that way.
But also seemed like there's some back and forth about this Gaffer the Cat.
I saw mostly back, not a lot of forth.
Is forth good and back bad?
In this equation,
Yeah.
yes, right now it is.
I as well saw mostly bad. And, I agree with it for the most part. I don't know if that's maybe too mean to say, but it's just there's something off about this Gaffer, I think.
I think there's a couple things off. One, we're not watching it through a 50-year-old compressed
blurry
video clip.
But we saw Gaffer in movies on film.
Yeah, and that's why I think there is something to the negativity here.
Mm-hmm.
He looks a little smooth,
He's
for
like
lack
a
of a
naked
better
mole
word.
rat, kind of.
I mean,
She's
or
like
just
a naked mole
hairless
rat?
cat.
Yeah, right. Like a Mr. Bigglesworth.
Correct, yes. Yeah. But yeah, I think the problem that people are having with it is, one, we have this character to compare it to. Like, we've seen Gaffer, we see new Gaffer, and we're like, that's different, I hate it. I don't hate it necessarily, but it seems to be the internet's reaction to it. For me, I see it, and it just looks a little less Muppety to me than old Gaffer. And that's where the disconnect, like sort of Muppet uncanny valley, is formed for me, because it's cool that they're putting out like a sneak peek of Gaffer. They also just put one out of George the Janitor, which George is like a one-to-one exact recreation.
I saw that floating around and I was like, why are there so many pictures of George the Janitor? But that is him.
I think it's a new one. I think what they're doing now is they're teasing out this show with a lot of new photos without saying they're new photos.
Okay.
And it seems to be, based on whoever the Muppet of the Week is that week. But that's a pretty high-res JPEG of George the Janitor there.
Yeah, that's true. I'm looking at Gaffer again. They made its eyes bigger and more. I think it almost looks more Muppety and less like a real cat.
Which I guess could be seen as a good thing.
I don't know. It's kind of fun that it looks so much like a real cat, though.
It's just I would say a weird choice, but obviously Rolf has this. To do fur all over except the face.
Except a smooth face, yes, which is not what the old Gaffer... The old Gaffer had a maybe slightly different texture of face just because it had to move so much, but it was... The illusion of fur was there.
Right, like consistent fur across the...
Maybe they don't make that kind of fabric anymore.
But, I mean, why not?
Joann's closed and they couldn't find it.
There's also... I don't know if I want to say this out loud to the internet.
Uh-huh.
There's something a little phallic about that new gaffer nose.
You're exactly right. There really is. It's
Like,
oh no. Okay. I agree with you completely.
like if you've seen the movie Nothing But Trouble,
If you've seen a penis.
well, that too, I guess.
Yeah, the nose of the judge in Nothing But Trouble. That's right.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a puppet, it's a cat.
Maybe it's a bad angle.
Yeah, and like it's not that far off from old Gaffer's nose. So I'm not saying, if you want to be generous, you could say, hey, it's like a pig in a blanket nose.
Matt, stop.
I'm trying to get us away from
You're
it.
grossing me out.
I'm sorry. That's hard to do. So I know I'm grossing the audience out.
Yeah. I think, but overall, I think this picture, I don't know. It makes me feel, I don't know if I want an exact replica of the Muppet Show, but I don't know. I'm going to wait and see.
They would never do this.
Uh-huh.
I wish they would like shoot it on film. And I know it's very like snobby, pretentious of me to say that, but there's something about reboots of certain things feeling too glossy that you're seeing it in a way you've never seen it before.
Yeah.
And so even though it probably looks exactly like it did to the people on set 50 years ago.
Right.
We didn't see it that way.
Right.
We saw it through all these compression filters and all this stuff and, old 60 frame videotape, whatever they shot on.
Or
back
in the Muppet
day.
movie has the film grain and the colors are always different on film and richer and
And so I feel like it exposes the artifice a little bit. Like this is something that for anyone out there who is into fun photoshopping things like I apparently am all the time, something I always do when I'm making a weird meme or if I'm trying to make a Muppet Photoshop or something like that, the last step is always to add some grain, throw a filter on there, make it look more cohesive and together and part of the same piece. And I think when we see Muppets this polished, like I feel like the whole thing's going to be in focus. I'm going to see this whole set all at the same time.
Right.
And it's just going to feel like a set and not a real place.
Yes. Instead of a grimy theater, which it really felt like, it'll feel like a set that was made to look grimy, which I definitely am getting from those boards behind it and stuff like that. And that picture of Gaffer.
Yeah. Which maybe, again, the Muppets are meta as hell a lot of times.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll call attention to something like this where it's like, oh, we're doing HD now. It's the Always Sunny in Philadelphia problem. Newer seasons of that show feel like 3 people playing on a set.
Right.
As opposed to the early episodes, which were recorded on like a camcorder from Best Buy and look more real.
Yeah. And that is, it's interesting that is like, I wonder if it's like studios are the ones who are like, you got to use this or you got to make it look like this. Or it's just interesting to me that a lot of people don't seem to like think of the film quality as like part of the presentation of something. Like you're saying.
Yeah. Like some people obviously do because we have people shooting things in VistaVision still.
Right.
So just give BTA a Muppet movie is what I'm saying, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see it. But I think it is, for the most part, Disney, other studios, everyone likes this very clean, polished look.
Right.
Like almost a default entertainment
And there's probably
look.
people who watch it who, if it didn't look like that, would be like, what's wrong with my TV?
Or I think more often than not, it's probably people watching it and saying, I didn't notice a difference. This looks like the Muppet Show that I remember.
Right. There's only downsides to it, I suppose. And the nerds are the ones who are like, well, I liked The Simpsons better when it was hand drawn or whatever.
And most people just go like, oh, well, yeah, it's less funny. And it's like, that's not what bothers me.
Yeah, the backgrounds used to be crazy colors. Now everything just looks real.
I think we've talked about this before when the Muppet Show reboot was first announced, that my concern is that you're comparing this show to a show from 50 years ago, something it can never truly recreate, but it hits that uncanny valley the more you try to one-to-one recreate it. And so the fact that Dave Goelz is the only voice and performer that will feel like the old Muppet Show exactly maybe will feel like a harsher contrast than it would if they were in a different setting.
Well, yeah, totally. Yes. I think they should have used a different setting. Maybe it's just, yeah, ultimately how I feel. And it would have been, yeah, exactly what you're saying. Just less tied to the past and more, you know, these guys, you love these guys. They're doing something a little different this time. But I can see the appeal of, like, if you're making a Muppet thing and you have a bunch of money, you probably do say, let's rebuild the backstage. That's going to be great.
Well, and I know a lot of people have been saying for a really long time that what the Muppets need to do is bring back the Muppet Show because that worked. It, propelled them into the spotlight. People still love it. And I get that instinct. And I do think maybe the Muppets are due for a reset.
Right.
I think, an outside the box movie about Miss Piggy maybe would be a more interesting way to go.
Yeah.
But, it seems like the Muppet Show is potentially a safer way to go about it. And I hope it's really good. I think it could be really good.
I think I disagree that it's safer. I do think that a weird Miss Piggy movie would definitely get people talking about it and going to see it, and it wouldn't have the hopes and dreams of the Muppet Show pinned to it. I think it could also be fun if they like hang a lantern on or hang a lampshade on that they're like on a set now. I don't know if there's something they could do where it's just like,
I think when I say safer, I don't mean safer creatively. I think I mean safer for Disney.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what I agree with. That's what I disagree with too, though. It's like, like if you think about it, it's not. I don't think it actually really is safer because I think if they poured a bunch of resources into like an actually good Miss Piggy movie, then everybody would be like, "What the fuck? They made an actually good Miss Piggy movie." And if they pour their resources into this Muppet Show thing and it's just okay, everyone will go. Remember a couple of years ago when they made one episode of the Muppet Show? That was interesting. Instead of Miss Piggy won an Oscar, we're going to talk about that forever.
I don't know. Very interesting. I don't pretend to understand Disney's decision making on things.
I don't know that they do either.
Yeah, that's a good point. But hopefully, the Muppet Show will be, a new chapter, the first chapter in a sort of a new book of the Muppets.
Yeah,
and maybe they aren't doing weird side movies based on characters. Who knows? But when I first heard that rumor pop up, I was a little bit more excited about the Muppet Show reboot because I, in my head, was like, this is it. This is the beginning of like a Muppet Renaissance reboot thing where they're going to tackle it with TV shows and they're going to give it a movie and they're going to do, I don't know, guest host of the Tonight Show again or something. So I feel like I'm trying not to get my hopes up that we might get something along those lines.
Right.
But I am still optimistic because you have Seth Rogen, you have Sabrina Carpenter, you have the Muppets. I feel like that's a good team up.
Yeah. We're in like a golden age of corny celebrities too, I feel like. There's probably all kinds of corny people. And lots of people who sing too.
Yeah, no, I think I'll be very curious to see if they can do something, get Sabrina Carpenter out of her comfort zone a little bit. Like they, like to take a country singer and put him in an opera number or whatever they do in the Muppet Show. Right. And I'll be very curious to see if they do anything like that with her or if she's going to do the Elton John thing of I only perform my songs and which of her songs are okay to perform with the Muppets.
That's a good question. She might have to not just perform her songs.
She might have to kids bop it up a little bit. Maybe she can sing Man-Child to Scooter.
Yeah, her and Piggy are going to get along like a house on fire, I think. Though.
Ooh, yeah. And they're like the same height.
She's really short?
She's very short.
Wow.
So before we get into talking about the summer of 1989, Sam, I was looking up some 1989 things. And we've talked a bit about the TV shows that Jim Henson Hour was competing with. The Cheers, the Full Houses. Like, it was a pretty stacked deck. But I also looked up the movies that came out in 1989.
Okay.
And holy hell, Sam. I'm just going to name some movies for you. And this is far from all of the movies, but it's going to be a lot of movies. And all these movies came out in 1989. February, we've got The Burbs and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Whoa.
April, we have Major League, Say Anything, Field of Dreams, and Pet Sematary.
All in 1 month?
All in 1 month.
Say Anything feels like a throwback in that group, I feel like. That's an earlier 80s
The fact that Say
movie.
Anything in Major League came out in the same month doesn't feel right. May, you've got Roadhouse and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh my God, that's the coolest month ever at the movies.
June, you've got Dead Poets Society, Ghostbusters 2, Batman, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Do the Right Thing.
Batman and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids were in the same month?
Uh-huh.
What the hell?
July, Weekend at Bernie's, Lethal Weapon 2, UHF, When Harry Met Sally, and Turner and Hooch.
Wow. Okay.
August, Parenthood, The Abyss, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child.
Well, okay.
Uncle Buck, and Little Monsters.
Yeah, Little Monsters used to scare the shit out of me at the video store because Howie's too scary looking.
October's got Look Who's Talking and Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers.
That one's not as good as the other ones.
Don't worry. Where we've got valleys, we've got peaks, Sam, because in November we've got Steel Magnolias, All Dogs Go to Heaven, The Little Mermaid, and Back to the Future 2.
The Little Mermaid?
Mm-hmm.
And Back to the Future 2. So the second golden age of Disney kicked off in this year, that same year that Field of Dreams came out, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and a billion other things.
And December features National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Driving Miss Daisy, Glory, The Wizard, and Born on the 4th of July.
That one's not that great either, I would say.
But like as far as like long lasting societal impact,
yep.
I feel like every reference we heard on every TV show throughout the 90s came from 1989.
I think that must be right. Yeah. And it's like maybe we're falling into the thing where it's like stuff was always better when you were a kid. But like what's like 2015 movies? Let's see. Let's see if this is exciting too.
I mean, you picked 2015, which is the year Star Wars Force Awakens came out, and Age of Ultron. So you picked a big year. But I bet there are not as many movies from 2015 that match the caliber of all the ones I just listed. And I will include UHF on that list.
You're so wrong because Mordecai came out in 2015.
Is that Big Nose Johnny Depp?
Big mustache Johnny Depp.
Big mustache? Oh, yeah. I thought he had like facial prosthetics and stuff.
I think he had a silly mustache was his thing. Yes, he had the like the mustache that millennials tattoo on their fingers, you know?
I mean, that was the perfect era to do so.
Yes, I think that's the only way that movie was sold. It was like, look, he's got
just had a mustache, and then he said, "I love bacon."
Let's see. So in January, Vice. That's the biggest one I see in that month.
Not quite a big cultural impact.
Dope. Jupiter Ascending came out in February.
A different kind of cultural impact.
The like third SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
50 Shades of Grey
50
did
Shades.
Come out. That's pretty big.
But I think that's one of those movies that like nobody, like people won't watch in the future. They'll just know that it existed. The Kingsman movie.
You guys are real horny in 2015. What are you guys doing?
Actually, we weren't that horny. We just had one horny movie. Hot Tub Time Machine 2.
We got permission to be publicly horny with one book.
With one book, yeah. Chappie.
Oh, yes, of course.
No, it was bad. Things were better in movie-wise, and a lot of things were, I'm sure, much worse. But movies are messed up. We got to get our movies back in order. That one of the top grossing films of the year can't be Furious 7. As much as I love those movies, that's not acceptable.
It is interesting. We are definitely, we've talked about this in the past when we've talked about cool movies that come out in the years we're discussing on this podcast, that oftentimes the movies you remember weren't always the actual like highest grossing films. Like nowadays, an Avengers comes out, you know it's going to be the highest grossing film. But before like the 80s, that was not the case. Like the highest grossing movies were much more artsy and were not the blockbusters. Right. Now, in 1989, we have definitely hit that point where the top grossing films in 1989 were Batman, Indiana Jones, Lethal Weapon, Look Who's Talking, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Like, it's the ones you would expect from that list.
Right. Those could all be top grossing movies today.
Well, I mean, and there's a reason that a bunch of them are, you know, getting sequels and reboots and all that stuff. So
the movie Tomorrowland came out in 2015. This was like a uniquely bad year. That movie Aloha, where Emma Stone got in trouble.
Oh, yeah, for playing a like half Asian character.
Nobody was having Yeah, nobody was having any fun. Jurassic World, which is great, but great in quotes, like big movie. A lot of people really hate it.
I mean, that's a good comparison because Aloha is a Cameron Crowe movie, as was Say Anything. Another movie that came out in 1989 was See No Evil, Hear No Evil.
What's that?
Which I, for some reason, I say for some reason, again, this is one of those, Matt's mom worked at a video store and he inherited a bunch of VHS tapes when they closed. It's a Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder movie.
Okay. I've seen this cover before.
Yeah, Gene Wilder plays a deaf man and Richard Pryor plays a blind man.
Great.
And they team up.
That's fine.
They get accused of a murder, I believe, and get thrown in prison. But I did love that movie as a kid, and I don't know if anyone else in the world has seen it. Well, while we, talk about high action-packed movies of the 1980s, how about we just settle in, get a little cozy, don't worry about camera cuts, and say, Sam, what did we watch this week?
We watched a Q&A with Jim Henson and Frank Oz at the Puppeteers of America convention, recorded sometime in early July 1989. Jim and Frank take questions from the audience, both as themselves and as Kermit, Cookie Monster, Fozzie, Rolf, and Grover, and Animal very briefly. They talk about their histories, their greatest puppeting challenges, their working relationship, and lots of other stuff that we'll talk about right now.
What'd you feel about this?
I wish I could have heard it a little bit better. I had a really hard time understanding what. At first, they're very good because Frank handles this all like a pro. I would say
Frank handles this exactly how I would handle this.
Yes, totally.
100%.
It's probably like how me and you both would handle this, where Jim's talking too quiet and he forgets to restate any of the questions, and often he says, I'm going to let Frank answer this one, which is so funny.
Yeah, it's the biggest tell for me that I'm like, ooh, I'm a Frank, was this is an hour-long Q&A. These are two of the most famous puppeteers in the world here at a puppetry festival, ready to answer questions from adoring fans. And Frank thinks, but what if that's not enough? What if that's not interesting? I should probably do a quick demonstration at the beginning of how we do Muppets on TV and how monitors work.
Yeah, what the heck was that all about?
It's a very weird... I loved watching this. I like that we got this insight into them. It's just to see them interact for this long is just a treat.
Yeah.
But it does jump wildly between talking to people who know everything about puppets and you can reference Kukla, Fran, and Ollie with no other explanation.
Right.
To suddenly being like, okay, so the Cookie Monster, he's this guy on this show called Sesame Street. And I'm like, yeah, I think they know that one, though.
Yeah, maybe he's got a little bit of and I don't listen to this, Frank. Maybe he's got a little bit of I'm the smartest guy in the room.
See, I mean, maybe I have that too, and I just don't.
No, I don't think so. So what
I
is
shield it? I think it's a worry that it won't be interesting.
Yeah.
And so you have to plan something that you think is interesting. And
then you quickly discover that it's like, if I keep doing this, I will burn 20 minutes accidentally of our hour that we have.
It's like an over preparing for the worst case scenario situation where, because he even says at one point, without your questions, this would be so boring.
Yeah. Oh, I thought he said their questions were boring.
No, I don't think that's what I think he was saying that, like, thank goodness you're here because without your questions, this would be so boring.
I was worried, and I said this a couple times leading up to this, that they were going to be mean to each other, which couldn't have been further from the truth. They were very nice to each other.
No.
But I think what also kind of stuck out to me was that Frank is maybe not as different from Jim as I thought. He's just talks more. Like, he's a yapper and Jim isn't. But I do think they both have the tendency to be like, which is totally like right, to be like, oh, everybody else is like better at this than I am. Like, I'm just here. I got lucky. Or like, I know what I'm doing, but these people are really like elevating it for me. Like at the end, he thanks the puppet makers and the writers and stuff like that. Totally unnecessary to do really in this like thing that's just about those two. But yeah, I just got the vibe that he was like, just like every bit as humble and whatever as Jim is. He just has a little bit more of like a boisterous personality.
Yeah, he's also better on his toes, like as far as
Don't-
improv chops
So
go.
kinda, except in this, I did feel very validated because people were like, "What books are you reading?" And he was like, "Fuck, fuck, fuck! I can't remember any
I
book
mean,
I'm
that
reading."
felt like the thing where he wanted to give a real answer
Yeah,
and his mind went blank. And so he's like,
and
I
that
actually
happens
don't
to
want
me
to
all the
joke
time.
here. I want to give you the real answer, but I can't
Right.
remember.
Right. Yeah. Or like when Fozzie comes out and he's like, "First of all, do not ask me to tell a joke. I do not have any jokes in my head." Which is also fair because it's probably been like he played Fozzie on the Jim Henson Hour briefly, but before that, it's been like 10 years or something since he's had to be Fozzie thinking of jokes like unprompted.
We also learn how removed Frank is from the Jim Henson Hour and
Yeah.
from Fraggle Rock, I think, because a question asker brings
yeah,
up
I
the
see.
concept of a Waldo
Yeah.
and specifically tying it to Waldo, the character on Jim
Yeah.
Henson Hour. And Frank
It's like, what?
does
Who
not
is
know who that is.
What is that? He doesn't know what it is, and he doesn't know who the character is either.
Yeah, he is so confused and looks to Jim to try to answer this question, but is clearly
And
out
even
of his
Jim is
element.
like, yeah, he's like a little guy on our show. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And he even says, you can't ask Fozzie those things.
Yeah. Rolf knows Waldo, though. Rolf is the one who's saying who Waldo is.
Yeah, but I think you previously had talked about how the Jim Henson Hour almost made a point against AI for us.
Jim really does of this one. He saw it coming.
Yeah, he gets asked about Waldo and about CGI puppets and characters. And Rolf says, technology will never replace art, you see. We who have it in the heart know that a computer will never have it in the heart.
That's so crazy. I would hope, I mean, it's too bad for a lot of reasons that he's not still alive, but I would be so curious to see his reaction to AI and if he would be like, woohoo, or if he would be like, this is the most evil thing ever. I would hope it would be the former, but really they're like, I don't know. It feels like a lot of filmmakers don't feel that way. Like it's the most evil thing ever. So I'd be very curious to see.
Yeah, I'd be like, he's so, into new technologies that I think he would obviously dabble in the way he is dabbling with CGI. He's at the forefront of a lot of these things with Waldo and other characters. And so he's obviously trying things out. But I think he does hold in his heart this idea that no matter how good Waldo gets, he will not be better than a Kermit.
Yeah, like you can tell that he totally like he's working with CGI, but you can tell like somewhere deep down inside he's kind of like, is CGI even ethical?
Yeah, and that's why I think it would be interesting if he was still alive to see if he was one of those filmmakers, which I feel like I've seen in multiple interviews, who sort of are like, well, the CGI is so good these days, we don't even have to really build anything or do anything physical. Like it's just easier this way. And they're not like directors that I dislike for any reason or like I typically like their movies, but they talk so flippantly about needing physical sets or the heart of it. And it's just so interesting to see how disconnected from, I don't know, the average viewer some directors are.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, this is kind of a tangent, but like in the future, you could sit someone down like in a film class or something and show them The Lord of the Rings and then be like, and here's The Hobbit. And just be like, look, see how this is fucked up? You can't just do CGI.
Yeah, I think that we've seen plenty of times. Of course, I'm going to forget any examples instantly of reboots or sequels or whatever. Hell, even throw out Yoda here, where we had Yoda, obviously in the old Star Wars movies, but even in The Phantom Menace originally as a puppet. And then you get CGI Yoda in episode 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And there is a disconnect there. It doesn't
Flipping
feel
around
like Yoda.
Yeah. That Yoda's kind of a joke, I feel like, these days. Like flipping around Sonic the Hedgehog Yoda.
I feel like it's come back around a little bit, just like
in
general, the feelings on the prequels. But at the time was definitely mocked, I would say. And from watching behind the scenes Star Wars stuff, it essentially was the plan to do puppet Yoda, except for in that scene they were going to switch to a CGI Yoda.
That would have been really bad too.
I think that's what happened. Was they had that realization that like,
I think they filmed it with him, didn't they? With the puppet.
I don't think so.
Okay, I
I
thought
don't
they
think
did.
they filmed anything with Frank on set for episode 2 or 3,
Okay.
but I don't know. It's just obviously we are Muppet fans. We
Yeah.
make a podcast about Muppets. We are going to lean towards physical, real puppets. But yeah, I don't know necessarily where Jim would have leaned over time, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time thinking that he would look at, like, he would be able to look back and be like, the worst puppet we ever built still looks more real than like the best CGI thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like Rocket Raccoon's great, but Rocket Raccoon's not real. Kermit's real.
Right. And obviously he is still making puppet shows in the years where people have moved beyond that
Right.
sort of technology. Like when he started with puppets, other puppet shows were on TV.
Yes, that's true.
Like he kept going with puppets his whole career.
Yeah. It's him and Alf at this point.
I do wonder sometimes how Jim feels about those like very different kinds of puppet shows, and if he has critiques for either the puppetry or the style of show in general.
Jim's up in heaven watching Trapped on Earth or whatever that was called. Like, dear God, I wish I hadn't invented the Muppets.
Why did I tell everyone that putting puppets on TV was a good idea?
I do like that guy shooting eyeballs out of his head, though. That's pretty cool. He would have liked that, I think.
More of that guy.
Yeah. And I do like the whipped cream can that jizzes everywhere in the Mr. Potato Head show. Why didn't I think of that?
America wasn't ready for it, Jim.
Yeah. Speaking of Yoda, it's the intro of this was so funny to me because Frank it's like he needs to go talk to a professional or something, because there's so many times where he's like, I hated puppets. I never wanted to be a puppeteer in my entire life until I was 10. It's like, before you were 10, you were probably too young to be a puppeteer.
Yeah. It's very interesting, Frank Oz's whole story, just because his parents were puppeteers. And
yeah, he's like, I spurned them. I never wanted to be like them until I was 10. And then I worked on it my whole life until I was 18. And I hated it. I didn't want to be a puppeteer anymore. So I went to school to be a journalist for 6 months. It's like, dude, just say you wanted to be a puppeteer.
Yeah, you've been a puppeteer for 99.9% of your life.
It's like, I got a job when I was 12 working band saws to make puppets.
Yeah, there was like a 2-year period added up over his entire life where he wasn't puppeteering.
Those first 9 years were really important to him, that he wasn't a puppeteer.
Yeah, age 8, he was like, fuck puppets. I am never going to look at a puppet for the rest of my life.
And then it's funny when he's like, and I hated doing voices. I never wanted to do a voice. Then I did a voice. And then 2 years later, I was Yoda. That's also pretty cool.
Yeah, he does say one of my favorite parts of that intro. I continued high school, went to Europe, had some fun for about a month in youth hostels, and then I came back to be a journalist because I had no desire to be a puppeteer.
Nasty man.
Yeah, I'm like, had some fun for about a month in youth hostels. You didn't need to say that, Frank.
Though that's the little special Frank magic, though.
Yeah, I do love that he does this whole 15-minute intro to this tape, and then in the middle of this evening with Jim Henson and Frank Oz,
says exactly the same thing,
like a shorter version of the same story. And so I do like the idea that he was asked to do an intro for this and then decided to intro it with the same story he tells in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah, like they got the recording back and they're like, he just told a whole story about himself. What the fuck?
I don't think we're allowed to cut it, though. It feels rude.
It was interesting, though. I liked when he talked about the Vagabond Puppet Theater, which was like the trailer that they had that they would drive around and do puppet shows. So it just, yeah. And it's so weird to think about him working with marionettes for so long. There seemed like be an undercurrent of marionette versus hand puppet civil war going on in this too.
Yeah, I think there's some questions that definitely are more surface level. Hey, how do you make a Muppet movie?
Yeah.
But there are other ones that I feel like get into that, yes, let the nerds ask the questions kind of thing, because they have strong opinions, or they're going to ask you questions that no one on the Tonight Show or whatever would ever ask you to talk about.
Yeah,
And so
they're
we get
outboring Jim.
yeah. And we get the opportunity for Jim and Frank to talk about the Jimmy Dean Show or talk about the commercials or Sam and Friends and things they worked on a long time ago that no one ever asks them about.
Mm-hmm.
And so even just, this isn't the most entertaining thing in the world, but if you have essentially an unfiltered hour-long conversation with Jim Henson and Frank Oz to listen to as a Muppet fan, it's definitely worth checking out.
Not the worst Q&A I've ever seen either. Like there's some...
I talked about it last time. I was so nervous.
Yeah. Nobody stands up and tells the whole story of their life first and then says... I think the funniest one was the marionette person, which we can go through it beat by beat, but there's a person who's like, do you ever work with marionettes, or like, do you ever want to? And they're kind of like, nah, not really. And then the person goes, why?
Well, and when Jim says, I just think hand puppets are best for television, there's multiple people who start cheering and clapping.
Yeah, and clapping. That's the thing that made me be like, uh-oh, the marionette people and the hand puppet people are not friends.
But yeah, this intro and outro were recorded in 1993, which Frank lets us know. So this was obviously created specifically for this VHS tape.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't get too deep, but he does just sort of introduce his meeting Jim, coming to work with the Muppets. And then his introduction for this actual event is that they would ask them from time to time to come and perform at festivals. But in his words, they were too lazy and worried about it being bad. So instead, they just chose to answer questions.
That's fair.
Which I also feel is highlighted when he first comes out. Like the first thing he says is, we're not here to perform.
And he does whenever he puts a puppet on, he's always in a big hurry to take it off, I feel like, too.
Oh, and he gets to see whenever he takes off a puppet, the whole crowd's like, oh, no, don't go away. And he's like, oh, okay. You want more Grover? Here you go.
Everyone's so amped to see Grover, and then he puts Grover on for like 1 minute, and he's about to take Grover off, and everyone's like, you better not take Grover off. We let you take Animal off. You're not taking Grover off. He also talks for like 15 minutes at the beginning. That's so crazy. I couldn't talk for 15 minutes straight about anything, I don't think.
It is a very long intro, and I feel like it's not a bad intro, but it is unnecessary for this thing. Like, I feel like you could jump into it pretty quickly. And again, because he does tell some of the same stories during the interview section. Like,
I just love him so much. I can't. I listened. I listened with rapt attention to the whole thing because I think he's just such an interesting, weird guy.
Yeah, and he feels it's very interesting. There's a couple references throughout this to Frank leaving essentially to go direct movies, and Jim is mostly just poking fun, having a couple jokes about it. But when Frank talks about it, he sounds sad that he only gets to work on Sesame Street a few days a year.
Yeah, I agree.
And at the very end,
it's kind of weird
when they're asking each of them about like their hopes and dreams and if there's things they haven't achieved in their careers yet. Frank just sort of says, he's like, yeah, no, I kind of just want to keep doing the Muppets with Jim. He
was ready to have a little Muppet vacation, I think. A real world vacation back to the Muppets.
Muppet Vision's not that far away. Their work on Muppet Vision, so he will be back with the Muppets soon.
Yeah,
but
he's done the Miss Piggy thing. He's going to do the Disney World thing.
Yeah. But there is this thing sort of looming over us at the moment. And my wife actually asked me the other day. She was like, "What does it feel like to be podcasting about this time period, knowing that Jim Henson's death is so close?" And so I was going to sort of turn that on you. Like, do you feel that as we're watching the Jim Henson Hour, and specifically as we're watching like this in Arsenio Hall, like, do you feel that on the horizon?
It's so hard not to like read something into everything he says or just be like, oh no. But I think the fact that he has no inkling that he's going to die so soon doesn't make it like, you can't read into like, well, he knows he's got cancer or he's like got some kind of depression or something like that. You can't read that into it. It's just, so then it's just more like tragic because it's like his show got canceled, but he's the kind of guy who's just like, well, we're gonna do the next thing. We're working on the storyteller. We're gonna make this show about nature. We have another Muppet movie in the can. Like, he is just the kind of guy who I imagine is thinking like, well, one thing that I feel bad about in the past is making fun of him so much for being like, and I've said this before, being like, this show is going to change the world.
Right.
Or like sometimes sounding like a crackpot about certain things, but it's like, oh yeah, he's fucking right. Like, he is thinking so hard about everything that he must think 15, 20, 30 years down the road, he's just like, and then I'll do this, and then I probably will have time to do this, and then I think I'll do this. So in that respect, it's deeply sad to me to see it. Like there, he literally would have just made something, multiple things every year for the rest of his life up until this day, probably.
Yeah, and that's sort of the feeling I have too, where it is a very interesting time for us on the podcast to
Mhm.
be sort of ramping up to this huge tragic moment. And it's so, just the coincidence of the way things will work out on this podcast.
Mhm.
We have this Jim Henson Hour era that we're going to be talking about until February that feels very much like it's the swan song sort of era. We're saying goodbye to Jim.
Mhm.
But then we have a little detour where for a while we're going to talk about Muppet Babies and Ghost of
Mhm.
Fafner Hall.
Mhm.
And I feel like during that period, I'll be thinking less about Jim's death
Yes. Yeah.
approaching. But then right after we finish Muppet Babies, not finish Muppet Babies, but after we finish that chunk
Yeah.
of Muppet Babies, we will get a run of The Witches, Ninja Turtles,
Oh,
Cartoon
yeah.
All-Stars to the Rescue, The Muppets at Walt Disney World, and then Jim dies.
Yeah. And I think if in a different universe he didn't die right after Jim Henson basically right after Jim Henson Hour was his last like big personal project, and there is a world where he like that was just a weird slump right before they sold to Disney.
Right.
And then we have Muppet Land at Disney, or like it's just totally completely different, I think.
Yeah, there's a very different world in which Jim lives, and the sale does go through with Disney in 1990.
It also is like he loves being alive and being famous and making art with all of his friends, and that part of it's really sad too, because it's like I don't know. There's just some celebrities who like clearly hate what they're doing or like resent being famous. But I guess probably because he got to hide under the thing most of the time and just gets to come out and talk about whatever he wants to. It's just like he's got such a zest for life. And it seems like Frank does too. Like they both just are like, it's so fun for them that is also like there's just no like spiral or anything like that. He never was like, I'm gonna stop doing puppets forever, fuck puppets. It's just he just liked it up until the very end.
It does color everything we're watching with this haze of oh right, yeah, this is going to be the last time he's doing this, or this is going to be the time he's doing this. And yeah, I think it just really does sort of put you in the headspace of somebody who was not 2 years old at the time like we were, who would have been completely caught off guard by this just tragic loss out of nowhere. Because there was no hint that he was slowing down. He had just announced this big thing with Disney. They put out the special, and then he's gone. And so I'm very curious to see how that feels as we get closer and we're watching all of this stuff, and then we just are in a period of this podcast where Jim Henson is no longer alive.
It makes me more sad when I see Frank talk about it, honestly. Like when I see him talking to this camera or talking about Muppet Vision, especially the Muppet Vision one, and you know that behind his eyes he's just like, oh gosh, I'm sad. I'm really sad that my friend is gone. Right. That's when I'm like, oh, the people he left behind, like that's going to be rough to see, like, I don't know, to see them pop up in projects or to give interviews and stuff. I think that will be really hard.
Yeah, it's definitely something where Muppet Vision, he was talking about literally a year after that had happened. And then now in this intro for this, he's talking a few years out from when Jim died, but a year after Richard Hunt died. So he is, I imagine, in this very hard time in his life where his friends that he worked so hard on this show with are dying. And I think we'll get some good sort of retrospective thoughts on that when we eventually watch Muppet Guys Talking, the documentary he made probably at this point 10, 15 years ago. But I think that's sort of the most open, honest conversations I've seen between like him and Jerry Nelson talking about what this time period was like. But I'm glad, again, that's why I think I'm glad we have things like this tape, because we don't get the two of them doing a lot of things together anymore on talk shows like we used to in the 70s.
Mhm.
And we don't get unfiltered moments with them. Like, there are parts of this where I'm like, oh, I can see what these two guys would be like with beers at a barbecue.
Yeah.
Like, watching the kids run around the pool or whatever.
Right. And Jim wouldn't have much to say probably, but he'd like go out and chase the kids around, do a funny voice or something.
Yeah, Frank's telling a boisterous story,
Frank's
and
just
Jim's just like,
blabbing.
that's not how it happened.
Yeah. Just jabbing him a little bit every now and then.
Yeah. But they do bring out a big old cardboard box of all their characters just shoved in there, which was interesting to see that you're bringing out, 4 or 5, whatever, of the most famous puppets in the world, and they're all just in one box crammed in there.
What else are you gonna do? Probably not great security at this event. Somebody these days probably would have walked away with the box.
Yeah, Jim just has that handcuffed to his wrist when he walks out on stage.
Like the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
That's where they got the idea.
Take out Kermit, hold him up for all the audience.
Yeah, we're working on SNL, and they're like, this guy keeps coming in with a box of puppets handcuffed to his wrist. We should steal that.
Must be the most expensive harmonica in the history of the world.
Jim at the top mentions the Song of the Cloud Forest and says, this will be airing this Sunday, which is the next episode after they're recording this of the Jim Henson Hour.
He's got such a great attitude about his show just being canceled.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I feel like he has reasoned it out, because he gets asked about the show being canceled.
Yeah.
And he says, well, they put it on Friday nights at 8 o'clock, and NBC had been dying on Friday nights at 8 o'clock all year, and we also died.
Yep. Yeah. Friday night, a tough one for sure.
Until TGIF figured it out.
Also, he says like they're gonna play the next few over the next few Sundays or whatever. That didn't happen, right?
Well, it kind of did. So he says, as some of you know, the show's already been canceled, but there are still 5 or 6 episodes left that will be airing over the next few Sundays. They would, in fact, air 3 more after he says this. So there's the one coming up, which is the Song of the Cloud Forest that he talks about, and then they'll air 2 more after that before deciding to not air the last 3.
Okay.
But most of the things he talks about in this do see the light of day roughly around when he promises them, except for Secrets of the Muppets.
Oh, that's one that didn't get played in that batch. It had to wait a few years. Okay.
Yeah, that one won't actually air until 2 years later on the CBC, and then 3 years later in the US as a standalone special on Nickelodeon. So that one where he's talking about, hey, you'll all get to see these behind the scenes things of the Muppets. It's like, yeah, eventually.
Right. What's the one he keeps talking about that's about the forest or something like that? Is it
Song of the Cloud Forest is sort of a, I mean, at first glance, it looks a little bit like a 90s Nickelodeon show to me.
Okay.
And that's one that we will see.
That's like the conservation thing he keeps talking about, where
I think there's 2 things.
That's what I think too. Yeah.
Because there's something he's alluding to that he doesn't want to talk about.
Right.
And so I think they were working on something related to environmentalism at this point. I don't know how far along it was. I don't remember necessarily any details from Brian G. Jones's biography or anything.
Right.
But or if he was just trying to brush that question off, who knows? But
was that the thing with the bear in the RV or whatever? Remember that? There's like a bear in a camper or something like that.
No.
There's some. What? You told me once about an environmental based show that they were working on, where it was like a bear and a couple other like an elephant or maybe like some other animals that were like in a camper or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was years ago though, because I feel like that was around Fraggle Rock time, where there was some show where they were gonna like travel the world in a boat or something.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
yes, they were gonna like actually go on expeditions on a boat.
Yeah,
with
they were actually going to international travel.
I think there was another dumbed down version of that where they were like in a van instead. I'm pretty sure that there was like an alternate.
They were like, well, boats really expensive.
Yeah,
we can't afford a van. So what do you think about that one? So yeah, we get a lot of questions throughout this. Some don't really go anywhere. Some are just very short answers. But I think about half of them actually lead to pretty interesting discussions between Jim and Frank, even before they get the puppets out. But somebody asked if the Jim Henson Hour episodes will ever be released on VHS, and he's sort of like, yeah, probably, maybe. I don't really know. Somebody asked Jim how he got started, and he pivots to be like, hey, Frank, how about you talk about how you got started?
Yeah, he's like, I met Frank, and
Yeah. He says he probably is like, hey, I met Frank at a puppet festival. And guess where we are, everyone? Turn to your right. Now turn to your left. One of those men is Frank Oz.
One of you is Frank, one of you is Jim. There's 50. It's a 50-50
You know which
split.
one.
Yeah.
But yeah, they ask a question that at first I was like, okay, this is sort of a slow start to a Q&A where someone was like, how many puppeteers do you use on the Muppets? And Jim's talking about how, we got 6 to 8 major performers, 6 to 8 secondary performers. And I'm like, okay, not really learning too much yet.
Hmm.
But then he slips in, some of our best puppeteers have gone on to direct movies. And that gets a laugh from the crowd and a little smile from Frank, which does pivot into Jim asking Frank to talk about the puppetry in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was nice to see Jim, complimenting Frank's outside work.
And then people start asking him about like the alternate ending and stuff, which is so interesting to think about, like how hard it would be to like learn that there was an alternate ending to that movie back then. Like how many magazines and stuff you'd have to read or whatever.
Yeah. And the fact that at this point in time, he's talking as if no one will ever see any of it.
Uh-huh.
And as we know, just a few years ago, the entire thing was released on like 4K Blu-ray.
With that fun commentary also where he's like, I would have done that different.
Yeah. But it was the stages where at this point he's talking about how only the work print exists and no one has really seen that. And eventually on DVD, they released that work print, like black and white, crappy looking version.
That's cool.
And then a few years later, obviously they put out the high res version. So, two of the people he references, hey, 2 people are the only people who have cuts of that.
Yeah.
I don't even have a cut. So apparently one of those 2 people held on to it and was able to hand it over. But Jim, of course, nerds out about how good the lip sync was on the plant in the movie. And Frank reveals it's because they averaged 30 takes for every plant line that they did in the movie.
No. I didn't really sink in when I heard him say it, but yeah.
Well, he said they could only do a couple plant lines at a time because of the puppetry.
Right.
And so they had to do little bits at a time and would average about 30 takes for each of those lines. And he says, which is why I went extraordinarily, obscenely over budget. After Frank tells the story about his parents and not wanting to be a puppeteer that he tells in the beginning of this VHS tape, we get, I think, a question. Again, a lot of this is really hard to understand because you don't hear the question askers until at the end. Maybe they gave them a microphone. I'm not really sure what happens.
A couple people were more hearable for sure. Like they were sitting closer to whatever
the one
sound
microphone
system
maybe
they had figured out. Yeah.
But I think somebody is asking what will happen to the Jim Henson Hour puppets.
Yeah.
I think they're still asking about the canceled show.
That's right.
And Jim's like, well, we have a warehouse in New York and one in London.
Period.
So probably one of those.
We just put them in a big warehouse.
Yeah, until one day my family will auction them off.
Yeah. Long time from now, though.
Yeah. Then they asked Jim and Frank each about what their greatest puppetry challenge was. Jim gives a weird answer not about himself, and Frank gives a short, not interesting enough answer about himself.
I will say that that's kind of common throughout this. They don't really get too in the weeds about anything. They go through a lot of questions, which is great.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they're just like, meh, I don't know.
Yeah, Jim obviously wants to nerd out about things, even if he wasn't directly responsible for bringing them to the screen. Because he talks about the Dark Crystal Landstriders and how much of a challenge that was to have these characters who are like men on 4 stilts crawling around, which is, again, an interesting answer, but not about his personal like puppetry challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends with Frank saying, yeah, Yoda was pretty hard.
But he doesn't say why. Agra and Yoda were hard, but no explanation as to why. And they're both very similar, like structured characters. So there probably is an interesting answer as to why. Maybe it's like face articulation or something like that.
Well, I have to imagine it's also when they're full body.
Yeah.
You have to be at probably a harsher angle to be under the ground because your arm is the full length of their body. So you have to do that weird, awkward
that's true.
angle thing. Whereas Miss Piggy, if you're only seeing from waist up, his head just needs to be a little out of frame.
And if it pokes up every now and then, that's fine.
That's fine.
It's okay. I think at the beginning of that question, Jim mentions Marvin Suggs.
There is something that I think he was trying to give Frank an answer of like, well, Marvin Suggs was your biggest challenge, right?
Yeah, but Frank is not interested in talking more about it. But I wonder if it's just like the energy in that character or like the voice or something.
Yeah. Well, and again,
If it
Frank
brought some
is
darkness out in him as he was performing it.
when Jim brings up Marvin Suggs, Frank laughs and says something like, "Oh yeah, that's an old character I used to do."
Yeah.
Like as if the audience doesn't know who Marvin Suggs is.
Something bad happened with Marvin Suggs. Frank lived as Marvin Suggs for a little while afterwards.
I think we do learn though. I think the voices tend to take a toll on Frank.
That's why he had to take a
because
break. He had to do Fozzie between some
Animal and
gravelly
Grover.
voice guys. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's talking about the voices. They both talk about their voices a little bit, which is interesting. And
Yeah.
Jim
I
says
love
basically like,
that.
"I don't have a lot of voices,
All my
guys."
voices are pretty much related to each other.
Yeah. And to be fair, Frank does the same thing where he's
Yeah.
like, if you listen very closely to Fozzie, you might hear Bert.
Yeah. He's underselling himself a little bit because Miss
Yes.
Piggy's got to be like one of the best voices of all time. But
Right.
but Jim is like, I can do me and I can do Southern me.
Yeah. He forgets about Gangster Dog.
It's new. It hasn't really sunk into his brain yet. They did a new voice.
This is the point where someone to ask them if there's any professional dreams that you still want to achieve. And when Frank says, "I want to keep on doing Muppets with Jim and keep on directing," and Jim says, "I want to do a theater piece at some point."
Yeah, but he can't because it would tie him up too long. He says mostly.
Yeah.
That's so tricky.
And interesting that right now the Muppets are on Broadway.
Yeah, right.
As part of
Pre-recorded and not for very long. Allegedly.
Yes,
but,
yeah, it's
yeah.
pre-recorded. They have great like Sesame Street puppeteers in there working on
Oh, cool.
the puppets. So I imagine the puppeteering is great, but
Yeah.
the tracks are pre-recorded.
I saw a Reddit thing up from like our Broadway or something like that of somebody complaining about how little the Muppets were in it.
I mean, it's got to be hard.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's also interesting when it comes to the theater piece that they would eventually do, Muppets at the O2 and Muppets at the Bowl. Like they get a version of this live Muppet performance out there in the world.
More like
eventually.
a one-off kind of thing, but yeah. And he's wanted to do this forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've tried different stage shows for a long time.
Wanted to do the goat one. What was the goat one called? Remember that?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's like like the goat herder or whatever. There was some big stage show that Jim was trying to put together for a long time. We kept talking about it because it was in Jim's Red Book and just never came to fruition. But I think about, the Nancy 71, the Nancy Sinatra special that they did in Vegas that there is apparently footage of out there somewhere that Nancy Sinatra owns, but has never been released anywhere.
I think about that every time I hear Nancy Sinatra on the radio. I'm like, she loved Muppets, and there's a performance of her with Muppets, and her and Jim were like buddies and toured together or something like that. But
well, and that was one of the eras where Jim was like wanting to do a Broadway show really badly.
Yeah.
And so they did this Vegas run, and then they were going to do the Move In with Nancy Nice and Easy special. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just all these things are sort of brought back up to the surface because we're watching them talk about their past and things they want to do still that they've been talking about doing for 20 years.
They made those like big man puppets for
the Boss Men.
The Boss Men, that's right.
But then Jim and Frank get their hardest question, which thinking back to the context, I think what they're actually asked is how many books are you reading right now?
Yes, because it's like a teacher who's like a Sesame Street fan or something who's like, you like teaching kids to read. How many books do you read? Hypocrites?
Not what are you reading right now, but specifically how many books are you reading this very moment?
Not a very good question, but
it's an attack. Like, because if it's not more than one, I feel like you're answering wrong.
There's a few like this, and this ties into this mysterious potpourri thing that they keep bringing up. And I feel like this person's part of whatever that is, because there's a few people who ask them like very specific questions, and they're usually Sesame Street related or something, and they're the ones who really want to see Grover, and then at some point Frank's like, oh, potpourri's here? We got to do whatever potpourri wants or something. There's some weird undercurrent here.
So potpourri is a late night session that they would have at festivals, and I think still have.
Okay.
Where basically people who are at the festival, like attendees, can perform short pieces. It's like open mic for puppets.
Oh.
And so I think what Frank is saying is that potpourri is about to happen after this, and so they're cutting into time for the potpourri.
Okay. And maybe there's some rowdy potpourri people.
Maybe, yeah.
Causing some trouble, too.
But the potpourri thing first comes up in one of the more interesting questions that I want to know a lot more about was one woman asks Jim about a potpourri he did with Rolf in the Catskills in 1963.
The only way she'd know about it is that she must have been there, right?
It seems like that. And Jim seems
crazy.
genuinely shocked that someone remembers this thing that he did, but in a nice heartwarming way of like,
Yeah.
whoa, like in a Ratatouille zooming into his past, kind of like, you just unlocked, I can't believe
like
I did that cool thing.
Years ago. Yeah. There's a couple times where they're trying to remember, and I think maybe Richard Hunt's in the audience or somebody.
He is, yes.
But there's a couple times
he is their Muppet Wiki.
Yeah, where they're trying to remember something, and somebody, occasionally him, but occasionally just some random person in the audience, will be like, "What year did we do that?" And someone will be like, "1964." Be like, "All right, you must have been there too."
Have been there. There's one guy who says it sort of begrudgingly at one point to Frank is asking. He's like, I think it was like 62 or 63. And the guy's like, 63. And it's like, oh, that guy clearly was there. And maybe wasn't happy about it, but it's stuck in his memory.
And you can tell exactly, like, you just know what the audience is like. It's like these, we would be doing the same thing probably. Or we'd be like, just like, oh God, I wish I could scream up to him what year it was. What yeah.
Yeah, it is that thing where if Jim Henson doesn't remember a detail about his life that now we've talked about 60 times, it's like, come on, Jim, how do you not know this?
Don't make me be the freak in this situation, Jim, please. But yeah, the book question, they probably take almost more time on that one than any other question, and they have neither of them has any answer.
I don't think either of them names a book.
No, neither of them do. Frank says he likes to read medical history books, is almost as specific as it gets.
Well, he says he likes to read about writing. So he reads books about script structure and playwriting. He carries around some Zen books, he says.
Oh, yeah, right.
And then he said he's weirdly into medical history.
You think he's read John's book, his tuberculosis book?
Maybe.
I bet he has.
Yeah, that feels like something that, a man who is essentially retired now, I guess.
Yeah.
If he's still into medical history,
somebody would buy it for him for his birthday or something, probably.
So what you're saying is we're even less degrees from Frank Oz than we think we are.
Yeah, John maybe assigned a book for him or something.
Personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jim clearly does not read very much these days. He alludes to essentially reading like contracts and scripts as what he gets to read. But then does say he reads about 3 books at a time very slowly. Which felt like a personal attack on me because that is precisely how I read. Is I have bookmarks in 3 or 4 books on my bedside table, and some of those bookmarks have not been moved in a year. But I'll get around to it.
I read 1 book at a time slowly. I think I'd get confused if I was reading.
I read different, like I'll read a nonfiction and a fiction at the same time. So I'll have like a biography and then a novel or something going on because I can keep those separate.
Right.
And then maybe my 3rd book will be like an audiobook that I can still sort of keep separate.
Okay, so they're stratified in your mind.
Yeah. I can't do like 3 novels at the same time.
Right.
My brain would break. But they do want to move on from not knowing what books are. So they bring out the puppets and they grab Cookie Monster and Kermit first of all. And Kermit's first question to Cookie Monster is, how many books have you been reading lately?
And he still doesn't have an answer to it.
No, because Cookie Monster is mostly hung up on the fact that he hasn't seen Kermit in a while.
Yeah. I thought that was cute. They used to be really good friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he starts off like, hi, Froggy. Me not see you in a long time. And says, one of my favorite lines of this whole thing, Bert and Ernie and me talking the other day say, where Kermit?
That's so sad.
He doing other show.
He like crumples up into a little sad pile every now and then about it. But he says they're proud of him. And it's also, while I was watching that, I was like, I think Cookie Monster maybe is more or equally as famous as Kermit the Frog. And at this point has a much larger body of work than Kermit the Frog by a long shot, I would say.
And just a much larger body.
Too, he's pretty big. I loved seeing him. He wasn't as big as I thought he was going to be, honestly. But it was really fun to see him sitting in Frank's lap.
Do you think this is where Frank got the idea to use puppets for therapy? And what about Bob? It's like, I can't tell Jim I'm proud of him unless I say it is Cookie Monster.
I had that exact thought. I had a similar thought when like he's good at improv when he's got a puppet on, but when he doesn't, he's just like, I don't know I can't think of one single book. But then he can do the little jibes and stuff when he's got like Grover on his hands.
Oh, and I think his animal improv impresses me more than anything, because Animal feels like a complete character.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes with Cookie Monster and Fozzie, you're like, okay, that's Frank answering that question in a slightly different voice.
Yeah, that's true. But Animal is yeah. I was worried that if I was him, I would not have remembered how to do the animal voice, probably.
That was interesting too, because he sort of alludes to, he's like, okay, give me a second. He's like, I gotta get into this. And I do feel like Grover is his weakest of his
Grover
performances
doesn't quite
here.
sound right.
And I wonder if that's because he's not doing a lot of Grover these days.
Yeah.
Or if he does, it's a couple days a year.
Or if he hurt himself doing Cookie Monster earlier.
Maybe. But somebody in the audience asked Cookie Monster if he would make a rap album.
I think there's maybe a couple people who ask about rap. I think don't they get asked about rap a little bit later too?
Yeah, this is one of the times when the conversation sort of devolves a little bit, it feels like, where there's a follow-up question asked, or people keep talking to each other in ways where I'm like, we can't hear this. And I understand this isn't for us, but I also want to hear it.
I think I started saying at the beginning also that at the start, Frank is really good, and generally throughout it, at restating the question. But if anybody asks anything to Jim, it's lost to history. He does not restate.
No, never once. And especially if it's a follow-up, they're not going to be like talking about whatever that person said. And
so
there's a few times
just,
that
look at somebody and they go, oh, okay. But all you hear is wah, 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 wah.
And there's a few times where like the audience fucking loves whatever just happened. They're clapping, they're laughing, whatever. And I'm like, man, I bet that was good. This is when somebody asks, how do you feel about environmental concerns? They're asking Kermit specifically. And he tells them that we're working on a show that will deal with some of that stuff. And when Cookie Monster asks, like, what that show? He's like, well, I don't want to talk about it right now.
Talk about it. Interesting.
And Cookie Monster is like, oh, yeah, another show without us. Somebody in the audience asks, hey, why isn't Kermit Love coming to the festival? I love this idea that this is the only place where you can ask that question and that Kermit the Frog would happily address it.
And did you have any clue? When's the last time either of these guys probably talked to Kermit Love?
I mean, yeah, maybe when they were on set for Sesame Street, but it seems like Kermit Love's doing a lot of traveling, because it turns out he's in Turkey helping them set up their Sesame Street. Okay.
That confused me because I thought Frank was just calling him a turkey.
Oh, that turkey.
But he was saying, so Frank, Cookie Monster says turkey. And then I thought that everybody got really confused and thought he was actually in Turkey. But he really was actually in Turkey.
Which I think Jim was also confused by, because when they finally go, Richard, where is he? And he says, he's in Turkey working on Sesame Street. You see Jim and Kermit go, oh, okay, well, I guess he really was in Turkey.
Or what if Frank said it like turkey, like an insult, but then he actually was in Turkey?
I mean, that feels like too big of a coincidence.
But turkey seems like something that Frank would say.
But not Cookie Monster, I don't think.
But Frank's just sitting there like, whoa, fuck, he really is in Turkey?
I don't think Cookie Monster would call anybody a turkey.
Yeah, maybe you're right. But he was indeed in Turkey.
Yes. Setting up their Sesame Street, which I think only lasted a couple of years. But it did start in 1989. So this is about the time that they would be working on that. And they had a big red version of Big Bird.
Oh, yeah.
That he probably built or was helping people learn how to work.
Or something,
Yeah, for those that don't remember, if they haven't listened to every episode of this podcast, how dare you, or just don't know, Kermit Love is the man who built Big Bird. And also Willie the hot dog vendor is his character on Sesame Street. But yeah, Kermit answers and says, I thought he might be here, but I didn't talk to him recently. Which again is just kind of that interesting thing where the audience knows who Kermit Love is. They can ask about that. Jim's willing to address it. They'll talk about Kermit Love from Kermit the Frog's point of view.
Right.
And it's just this nice little niche reference thing for people at this festival and people like us now looking back on this career, that we're not sitting there completely bewildered by a question about Kermit Love and where is he?
Yeah, where there's no context at all. You're right. Any outside observer would be like, You're talking to a puppet frog. What the fuck are you talking
Yeah.
about? Who's
Why are you asking Kermit the Frog
Love?
about a different human who's not here?
Who's also named Kermit.
And it's interesting because I think there are some younger people in the audience
Uh-huh.
who are asking some of these questions, because contrasted with the "Where's Kermit Love?" question, you also get, how long does it take to make a movie?
Yeah.
Which
Right.
sounds like a younger question, but also the voice sounds younger.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
asking the question.
Right.
But Cookie Monster says it's time for him to go back in the box, and the crowd gets sad, and he gets happy because he tells Kermit, they love me. I must be a hit.
My favorite part of the whole thing was when somebody around now asks him how his eyes move like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, his Cookie Monster got the bobbly eyes. And Kermit's like, we do it all with computers. I thought that was really funny. But does that person really not know how they do it?
I that's the thing, is I think there are a couple times people are asking questions that are very specifically like puppet building questions.
Yeah.
That they're like, no, I want you to tell me exactly how you made his googly eyes.
I'll never know.
And there seems to be a line that Frank and Jim are sort of dancing through this, where they're happy to talk about almost everything, but there are a couple times where they don't necessarily want to talk about the way the puppets fully get built.
Right.
It's interesting that like they expose a lot of the magic, but they won't quite go everywhere.
Yeah.
I do like when Frank's trying to hand off Cookie Monster and Kermit looks down in the box. He's like, anyone want to see Animal? And the crowd cheers. And Frank goes to put away Cookie Monster, and the crowd is like, boo, we want Cookie Monster. And Cookie Monster says something along the lines of like, you want Animal? Me got to go.
Yeah, it's irreversible beer at the same time.
Yeah. But he just plops Cookie down in a box.
Just throws him.
The crowd did seem a little upset by, seeing that sack of blue just dropped into a box. But thankfully they see Animal, and he makes up for it.
Is this the origin of the sex pain food drums thing?
I don't think so. I think he has said that before.
Okay. But yeah, he only has Animal for a second. Then he's like, there's not really that much you can do with Animal.
But he does a great job with him.
Yeah, he does. The breathing thing really is what brings Animal like full circle, I think.
Yeah, and just the instant like snap into character that breathing does so much. And just, he says it as if it's the most simple thing in the world to do. But he says Animal is mostly just repeating what other people are saying.
Yeah.
Which, again, technically, yeah. But when he does it, it's so good.
It's
and
so
when he's
funny.
doing it like in an improv way, he will like mispronounce a word or not understand the person or get excited about something they said, thinking they said something else. But when Kermit's like, hey, look, there's a bunch of puppeteers here, he go, Papa what?
Papa what?
And then he keeps
Papa
going,
what?
hi, Froggy. And keeps getting distracted by
really
saying
funny.
hi to Kermit.
I like when Kermit says, we're at MIT. And he's like, what? And he's like, MIT. And Animal says, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, after the last hi, Froggy, Frank just kind of goes, well, that's about it.
That's it. Yeah. And he's right. So do you think that in Frank's head, Animal has had sex before?
Yes. 100%.
I do too. That's a challenging thing to think about.
I imagine in Frank's head, it is sort of a Gene Simmons scenario.
Whom and what is he having sex with? Human women? Whom and what is he having sex with?
I imagine human women by the thousands while on tour.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I don't think you can...
Dr. Teeth as well.
Yeah, but I think Dr. Teeth has like a girlfriend in every city.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't have thousands. He's got maybe like 50.
50?
Exactly.
Clearly the right answer.
It's got to be 50. Yeah.
But yeah, I think Animal does not remember names of his former lovers.
Of himself, maybe.
Yeah. That's why he just goes by Animal.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asks an interesting question about how many times the characters have to be rebuilt. And basically, it seems like the rough answer is that most of the Sesame Street characters at this point have been rebuilt 2 to 3 times.
But they go through a lot of Kermits.
That is what he says. He says, we've been through a lot of Kermits, which the audience does not love to hear.
One of the most mystical things to me is that they have that these aren't the same guys that we're seeing every time. It's like they're rebuilt so well that they're like indistinguishable from each other, even though it's like intellectually, this is the 10th Fozzie we've seen, or like maybe even more than that. I'm sure somebody could look at them and be like, yeah, that's the 1985 to 1989 Fozzie.
Oh, there are Muppet Wiki articles to help you out with this, Sam, called like Fozzie through the years, Miss Piggy through the years, because some puppets do go through much more. Like Miss Piggy is one who has gone through huge changes in
Right.
her physicality.
Right.
But, you know, Kermit the Frog, ever since he ditched the double collar, doesn't feel like he's gotten that many different shades of green or anything going on.
Yeah.
So knowing, that like there's probably been 20 of those guys hanging around,
Right.
and we don't know which of the 20 Jim is operating at any time, is, a part of the magic, I guess.
And just that, somebody's job is to make exactly the same Kermit and Piggy a million times. Where Kermit, like Piggy, seems like one of the hardest puppets you could ever make, but they have to make
I think
a bunch
that's why
of
they
them.
probably don't maybe make as many Piggies as they do
Right.
Kermits, because Kermit is a sock, and like Piggy, like we can only flock things once a year, guys.
Yeah,
don't come to us for flocking.
Don't spray chocolate pudding on Piggy, please.
Well, that's the thing. Is like they obviously have to have puppets for things like that, like putting like makeup on her in Muppets Take Manhattan if she's going to go underwater for a musical number. Like there's a lot of special Piggies built, but I wonder how many currently existing usable Piggy puppets there are in the world right now.
Yeah.
But I think he says there's only been 3 Ernies at this point, is what he says, which is interesting because I think the first Ernie is one of those that looks very different,
right,
from the later Ernies.
Not a lot of rough usage on Ernie, I feel like, though.
I mean, he's taking a lot of baths.
That's true. There's naked Ernie and clothed Ernie.
Also, according to Muppet Wiki, at this point, there's been like 6 or 7 Ernies. So maybe Jim doesn't know is the real answer.
Okay.
Or they could be maybe like minor tweaks to characters as opposed to like full rebuilds aren't necessarily part of his math. Somebody asks how they develop the voices for their characters, and a man yells, "Bring out Grover!"
Yeah, shut up, guy. That was crazy.
But this is when Frank lets us know that, actually, speaking of the voices, I'm going to bring out Fozzie next because Animal and Grover back to back is a bit too rough on my vocal cords.
I gotta have a rest, yeah.
Frank tells a somewhat misremembered story about the first time he did a voice for the Muppets.
Okay.
He says the first time he did a voice was the two-headed monster, not the Sesame Street one, but the one on the Al Hurt show.
Okay.
This is something we watched. It's it's sort of like, they look more like dragons. It's like 2 dragon heads, and their whole thing is Al Hurt will ask them a question, and they'll just answer at the same time and talk over each other.
Yes, right.
I believe, according to Muppet Wiki and based on me listening to it, that this is Jim and Frank playing the two-headed monster here. But Frank says in this answer that his first voice was doing the two-headed monster with Jerry Nelson.
Oh, which is the two-headed monster from Muppet Show. So is he just
which Frank didn't do.
Right.
So I think maybe he just misremembers Jerry Nelson being there as a part of this. Or he's conflating multiple things of working with Jerry Nelson on this. Because I don't even think Jerry Nelson was full-time like with the Muppets during the Al Hurt show period.
Right.
So Jim doesn't correct him. Jim doesn't jump in and say, I think that was me. But I think it was him.
Somebody in the audience was fuming.
I'm Al Hurt and you're wrong. Something that we don't hear the clear question and they do not restate it, and it seems like an awkward moment. The best I could figure out is it feels like somebody's asking them what they would change about the Puppeteers of America organization.
Yes, I think that's exactly what it was. And they both do get very like, well...
Frank immediately sidesteps and is like, well, I'm not answering that one.
I'm not saying anything about that. Yeah. Which I wonder if there was something to change.
It feels like, based on Jim's very, political answer, he's not burning any bridges.
Right.
But it does feel like he's referencing something that is happening. Like there must be something either with recent festivals or leadership or something that people are not happy about at this time.
Seems like he wants there to... the answer is like revolves around getting younger people involved or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, like I don't know if it's the current leadership is a little too old-timey or if they're saying no to certain things, but it seems like he's speaking in favor of progress. Like I do think we should try things and try out new stuff, but doesn't say unlike the current leadership believes or whatever.
Right.
So it's very, very interesting that there does seem to be something bubbling under the surface there.
Yeah, I wrote both were very polite, and they were. But maybe somebody out there who's listening knows what was going on in 1989 behind the scenes.
Well, because this is also Jim was president of this organization for like 2 years.
Right.
And then Frank's father was president in the 70s. So I am sure they both have opinions.
I think one interesting thing kind of is like what I still think about the Muppets, in that they get a lot of questions about Sesame Street, but I feel like these two guys probably don't spend a ton of time thinking about Sesame Street. Or maybe
That's
they
true.
do, but it's like they're not involved. Because I think one of the next questions is how much research goes into Sesame Street.
Mhm.
Something that they would have no involvement with at all. Like they would just
Yeah.
get the end result of that research being like, this script is written this way because of this. But it's like also the Sesame Street Muppets are still like some of the hugest children's stars in the universe forever and ever. But just kind of like, I don't know, even by Jim and the Muppet team, it feels a little bit like, not like they're less good or anything, but it's just like that's such a different world. And probably because they don't have as much power over them or something like that too. But just how many Sesame Street questions they get compared to how much like we think about Sesame Street,
Right.
which is not that often, and how much they probably do, which is a couple days a year for Frank.
Even then, they're asked about Barkley at one point, and
Mhm.
Jim momentarily doesn't remember who the current puppeteer inside of Barkley is. And
Right.
someone's
Somebody
like, Fred
thinks
Garbo.
Jim plays Barkley. Is that what that is?
Oh, I don't think so. I think they were just asking who plays
Oh,
Barkley.
I thought they said, "Do you play Barkley on Sesame Street?"
Oh,
But no, maybe it was who plays Barkley. Imagining Jim, he'd hurt himself so badly trying to play Barkley.
yeah. He's like, Barkley's a young man's game.
I would break in half. Yeah.
But yeah, he talks about Brian Meal, who played Barkley early on. But then
Yeah.
he goes to reference somebody else playing Barkley now and doesn't remember Fred Garbo's name at first. There's a woman who I think hits on Kermit.
I think she like propositions him or something. Yeah, I like you, and I'd like to show you blank.
Yeah, and I don't know what she says, but Kermit's response is, well, whatever that is, it sounds very nice.
Yeah. And Frank's like, Miss Piggy would have something to say about that.
Yeah, I think somebody in the audience asks what Miss Piggy thinks of that. Jim asks Frank, yeah, what would Miss Piggy think of that? And he's like, well, she's not here, but if she was, she would most definitely react.
I gotta know what she wants to show Kermit. It could
Yeah.
only be the most filthy thing possible.
It was one of those scenarios where my brain tried to fill in the gaps, and all of them were terrible.
I'd like to stick my hand up, yeah, Kermit.
Yeah.
That's the best version.
Maybe. But then we learn about the Sesame Street filming and how much time they actually spend. Jim says it in a way where I can't imagine the people on Sesame Street would agree with this.
Mhm.
But in his words, they're performing less and less because they have libraries of thousands of sketches and they
Yeah.
don't really need us anymore.
Right.
I bet John Stone wouldn't say that's the reason.
Yeah, he'd be like, Jim, you could come back full time. You could do street scenes. We would love
Yeah,
it.
please. We have not seen Bert and Ernie on Sesame Street itself in years.
Bert and Ernie sure have been inside their apartment for a long time.
Yeah.
Are they okay?
They talk briefly about Brian Froud working on Dark Crystal. Then they're asked about the lion on Jim Henson Hour.
Why is he there? We just liked him, is basically the answer.
Yeah, pretty much. And Jim has to say, has that one been on the air yet? And he's like, oh, no, that one's coming up in a few weeks. They do actually get to see that one. That one airs on July 23rd. So
Okay.
just like a couple weeks after this festival, they will see the lion's backstory.
That's good that there was not just an unexplained lion for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Though it does feel very like entertainment or edutainment CD-ROM game, just like random.
Yeah, you
Big
can have a
animal.
lion.
Yeah.
They ask about the storyteller and if there's going to be any more of those. And he mentions the Greek myths told in a similar story way, but not with John Hurt, which is interesting because I don't know much about the Greek myth storyteller ones, but I do know that those come out after Jim dies.
Oh.
So I didn't know if maybe, I don't know. I didn't know how much involvement Jim would have had in that.
I was a little surprised by that too, because that did feel like a revivation. What's the word? Like
Mhm.
like they're bringing it back instead of like a direct continuation of the storyteller.
Yeah, so I think because it's 4 episodes, I think, of the Greek myth storyteller, and it seems like a thing that started, at least in some way, Jim was working on it before he died,
Mm-hmm.
but then was finished and released after he died.
All right.
They ask about internships and training at the Jim Henson Company. And as Jim says, the nice thing nowadays is that we're getting younger people who are already very good at puppeteering before they come to us, as opposed to having to train them for years to get good.
They're getting to the point now where they've inspired the next generation to the point where they don't need to spend any time training people.
Right. He shouts out Karen Prell and Steve Whitmire as two
Yeah.
puppeteers that he found as they were younger but already skilled. And then Fozzie and Rolf come out, but something stuck on Fozzie's mouth. And
he's almost got to seam rip the sides of his face or something like that.
Yeah, they have a few technical issues with these puppets, which they actually handle really well. But something about Fozzie's mouth isn't quite opening the way Frank wants to, so he's going to turn around and fix that while he tells Jim to vamp as Rolf. Which
Jim does not do. Really?
He kind of does, but the way he vamps is, I was there before anybody. Remember the Jimmy Dean show? That was television.
Rolf's on the same page as us.
Yeah, but Fozzie comes back and says, you're a very bitter dog, aren't you? Maybe that's why you aren't working so much.
Poor Rolf. Rolf was just a prominent secondary character in Dog City, Fozzie. Have some respect.
But then Frank realizes that Fozzie's hat is pinned to his head, and so he can't use, as he calls it, his comedic crutch.
His comedy crutch, yeah.
So he has to take the pin off, and that's when Rolf realizes that his right hand is pinned to his chest, and so they both got problems.
It was so weird that I think we already talked about this a little bit, but that he pretended like Rolf's arm was broken on the
Arsenio Hall show.
On the Arsenio Hall show, instead of just having it pinned up. I wonder what that was all about.
Yeah, I felt like you could have done more of a bit with that as opposed to just saying, oh yeah, it's because another puppeteer isn't here.
Or just draped it across. Or maybe he wanted to talk about that. We wanted to talk about how they worked.
Somebody asked about the Jimmy Dean show and if it was a good sort of comedy training ground for Rolf and for Jim. I don't think Jim fully understands the question, which is a good question.
I fully understand that. You think it's a good question?
I think so. I think he's asking that, hey, you weren't creating a lot of original comedy before you joined the Jimmy Dean show. You were doing lip syncing to records and things, and obviously making funny material with Sam and Friends, but you were on a sitcom style writing situation.
Mm-hmm.
Was that helpful for you to get your comedy chops?
Was Jerry with them at that point? Jerry Jewell?
I think so. Okay. But yes, I think they had to work with the Jimmy Dean writers, though, if I remember correctly.
Okay. I thought he was maybe on that team as well, though.
I think he was maybe involved, but I don't remember the details of how much he had to do with that. But yeah, this leads to eventually herd of cows joke, because of course it does.
The two jokes I remember.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, I never know if they're actually doing it correctly, because
I don't think they did. I feel like they didn't this time. But
there was a stumble.
Yeah. But yeah, this is Fozzie comes out real strong and says, nobody asked me to tell any jokes. I don't know any.
Very clearly, the thing that anyone always asks Frank about is Fozzie's jokes. And it seems like, one, he doesn't remember them, and two, he's tired of telling them.
I can never. Do you have any jokes locked and loaded in your head?
No. I hear people on some podcasts sometimes be like, what's your favorite joke?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, yeah, well, this is one guy. And I'm like, what? How is that just in your brain? That's when the question about the Waldo comes up, and Frank has no idea what the hell Waldo C. Graphic is, or why people are asking about a CG character.
Frank and Fozzie's brains both explode. They're just staring.
But then we get a question about Sam and Friends, which I think the question was, what was that character's name?
There's a guy who has got the same voice as Rolf. Who was it?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it was. And Jim clarifies, oh, that was Harry, and he does the Harry voice.
Watching this was so surreal, because it is kind of I know we remember that, but I can't remember. I mean, I can't believe you remember that, Jim. For some reason, to me, it's just so weird that it's
30 years later, he's like, oh, yeah, man. And you're like, oh, it's him. He's here. Yeah. And the only bummer is that throughout this, they're showing photos of some of the things that these guys have worked on. And during that time, they're showing a Sam and Friends picture. So we don't get to see
it come out of his mouth.
Yeah. So we've never gotten to see Jim speak as Harry.
That's too bad.
It's time to go. So Fozzie pulls out Grover. That's not what happens. Frank puts away Fozzie and pulls out Grover. And Kermit returns instead of Rolf. Someone shouts at Grover, count to 10.
Why is everybody so amped on Grover?
I don't know, but It feels rude to yell at him to count to 10, which he does, but also he's like, okay, if this is what you want, sure. They ask why Jim doesn't use marionettes, and that's when he gives his answer that sort of divides the crowd a little bit. But there are some people who cheer very loudly for him when he says hand puppets are best for television.
Fuck marionettes.
I mean, yeah, his
Jim
biggest
Henson.
thing that he says is that the strings are hard to hide on television.
Right.
But really, it's just a completely different kind of puppet.
Yeah.
And he never really uses marionettes. Very,
No.
very rarely does he use marionettes
Like,
for anything.
Back to like Emmett Otter days, there was like
Right.
there was marionettes.
Just the weird jiggly-legged
Yeah,
Emmett walking down
and
the
it was-
street.
I like that. I like when
It's
there's
very
a little
cute.
bit of a combo of them, but I would think a marionette would be so annoying to use. I've never really done one,
Yeah.
but it's very impressive when people are very good at marionettes, but it's a little more convenient to just put your hand in a guy and go, "Hey, what's up?"
Well, especially again, that's what he got to start on. Like,
Yeah.
yes, he appreciates other forms of puppetry and he learned more about them in Europe and whatever. But
Right.
obviously, this guy has made his career with hand puppets.
Yeah. I think it's probably harder to get money for a marionette show than it is for a hand puppet show, is my guess too.
I mean, at this point too, because I imagine new puppeteers coming in
Our
saying,
Muppet
"Hey, I
style
want money for a
guys.
puppet show." They're gonna be like, "You like the Muppets?" And they're like, "Well, no." And they're like, "Call me when you got a Muppet."
Yeah.
And that's, I think, more American based, as we saw when we watched the Jim Henson Presents the World of Puppetry. Obviously, there were other countries where it was like an entire theater just for marionettes,
That's
and it was
right.
like sold out every day. And we're like,
And it
oh,
was
okay.
amazing too.
Yeah. At this point, we're very near the end of the Q&A, but it does sort of drive off a cliff as far as interesting questions go.
Yeah. And the whole audience starts to get rowdy. I feel like it just gets rowdy and weird.
I think it's partially Frank's fault because he keeps mentioning that they need to finish.
Yeah.
And so if I'm in the audience, I'm like, okay, dude, you can wrap up. It's fine.
Mhm.
But then he keeps going and keeps taking questions, but then keeps mentioning that the potpourri is coming up and they should probably leave. And I'm like, I am uncomfortable now. So they answer some more questions about if Muppet Fleece is commercially available, which Richard answers for them.
I like that Grover's like, I don't want to hear anything about this.
Yeah. Richard says yes, by the way, which I think it was at the time, but maybe isn't now. I think the actual fleece is discontinued.
It was like Muppet brand fleece, or
no, it's a certain kind of fleece that I'm right now just blanking on the name of. But
Yeah.
I know it's a thing that I see from time to time. Puppet builders that we follow through Commitment who will post about like they got their hands on an old actual, like, you know, piece of
Antron?
that fleece.
Was it Antron
That's
fleece?
what it is. Yeah. And there are companies who make, you know, essentially like replica fleece to try and get the same texture as Muppets. But it is definitely highly sought after if you can get the actual stuff.
But yeah, they like dunk the puppets in the box and they're like, we're out of here.
And that's just where it sort of ends. And then we get a brief Frank outro on the VHS tape where he does, as Sam said earlier, sort of needlessly really goes out of his way to say how much this was not just about him and Jim.
Yeah, he probably watched it and got wistful.
Yeah, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
But I do think he undersells himself as such a big part of this.
Yeah. And how much he loves the Puppeteers of America too, which maybe he felt guilty by from the part where he was saying, I'm not going to talk about the Puppeteers of America in the
where he's like, I never want to be a puppeteer. Why would I ever want to live my life as a puppeteer?
This is kind of a crazy thing to release on video, only because it's so impossible to hear such a large portion of it.
Maybe, you know, the original tape was a little bit better quality, but I can't imagine much because, I mean, this is the best quality version that's out there that we watched. Funnily enough, the Puppeteers of America YouTube channel actually officially released this on their YouTube channel years later, but it's worse quality than the one we're watching.
The heck? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, there's not a high quality version of this by any means. I don't imagine one exists, but it seems like they didn't have the microphone on those people and they were just shouting out randomly from the audience. So
yeah,
I think there's just some of this that you would not be able to understand no matter what copy you had.
It should have been like a book, like a transcript or something.
Yeah. But nope, I don't think they were worried about what would happen with this after that one night. I think they were solely focused on having Jim and Frank, you know, live and in person answering puppet questions, which I imagine was very exciting.
It's nice to see, like, I was talking about how they like being alive or something. It's just nice they're just two not bitter people who like, and you get such an unvarnished glimpse into what being like an artist is like, or like what being in, I don't know, they just seem so normal in like a refreshing way, and they're not trying to sugarcoat any of their answers, or they're not like PR answers or anything like that. It's just like two normal kind of dorky guys.
I don't know how we've gone this long and not mentioned Jim's shirt though.
Oh yeah, dude, he's looking cool.
He's got a very floral, like big Tommy Bahama shirt on that
Yeah.
looks like he's either just about to or just got back from vacation. And it's like, all right, you got me for an hour.
Yeah, and they're just a couple of guys with big khakis on too.
Big khakis.
Hawaiian shirt and khakis. And he looks cool as hell.
Well, since that's all we watched this week, I got to ask Sam, what non-Muppet things did you enjoy this week?
I've been in a slump lately. I've been playing Final Fantasy Tactics, the re-release of that. Have you ever played that before?
I have not.
That's my favorite kind of game, is like over top real-time strategy.
We've talked about this where it's like it's your favorite
games.
and my least favorite kind of game.
Yeah. I love that, and I love like city builders and stuff like that. And I've been playing Final Fantasy Tactics, and it's fine. It's a great game. And I've been playing a couple on a couple like city sims. I've been playing 2 Point Museum or 3 Point Museum and RimWorld, but I'm sick of both of those. If anybody out there or on our Discord has a suggestion for a city builder sim or a real-time or a turn-based strategy game I can play, please let me know. What I really want is to play Warhammer, but I don't have enough time or money to do that. So as close as I can get to that, or as close as I can get to like a Sim City or something, but a newer Sim City, let me know. What have you been doing? You watch Muppet Christmas Carol, you crazy guy.
I didn't watch the full thing of Muppet Christmas Carol. We always watch Muppet Christmas Carol, or at least have it on in the background when we're decorating for Christmas.
Did your baby think it was boring?
No, mostly we don't actually want her to have screen time. So I was showing her a little bit of Muppet Christmas Carol, but did not actually let her sit and watch it.
That's too bad.
But yeah, we are probably going to watch it today because we have everything up for Christmas in the house, but we have not hung the ornaments on the tree yet. So
oh wow,
we'll probably.
But the tree's up.
The tree is up.
And these, you also had a picture of some Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer guys. Are those like the really nice recreations of them that they released?
Yeah, those like the 1-to-1.
I should have got those
scale recreations that were a gift from my in-laws.
What's the articulation like on those guys?
It's not great, but it's some.
They're not like
their
wire
heads sort of
frame,
like rotate and their arms go up and down.
They're not wire or anything like that though.
No. Okay. You cannot make your own Rudolph special with them.
Okay. That makes me feel less bad about not having them. I thought maybe they were like a foam and wire situation.
No. They are very much plastic.
They look great.
Yeah, they look amazing. We're still trying to find a home for them. Right now, they're just all on our dining room table.
You need a mantle.
I mean, we have surfaces that work like mantles throughout the house, but they also already have Christmas things that we put there every year. So I have my like Mickey clock shop thing from when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
We have, the Target birds. We've got lots of stuff to display for Christmas, and we'll find space eventually. I'm sure my office will inherit some of it because we'll run out of space. But yeah, other than that, I feel like the only thing I'm kind of keeping up with is that I'm still watching Formula One, which I feel like I haven't talked about in a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
But it's still happening. I'm still watching Formula One.
Was there a really bad crash recently?
There was this past week. There was actually yesterday, as we're recording this, there was a really bad crash, which thankfully, because of modern Formula One, the guy was completely fine and was in the car like later on that day.
That's what the thing that the Blue Sky post I saw was like. It's amazing that people can walk away from this kind of thing, because it looked like the car just like floated up in the air and slammed into the wall as hard as it possibly could.
Pretty much, he hit 57 G's.
Jesus.
From the impact.
What is the technology that keeps them from not?
I think carbon fiber is mostly what it is.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a mix of the sort of the cockpit that they're in is so sturdy these days that they are not going to like hit the wall themselves. Like that is such a strong piece of material around them that like as long as that stays intact, they're good. And so a lot of the problems that killed many drivers in the past in Formula One just don't exist anymore because they have such a strong car and they have things that actually protect their face now. And so Yeah, a lot of accidents that happened even as recently as like the early 2000s and the 90s, like would not have happened, or the people would not have died
Mhm.
if they were in today's cars, because that's
That's
just the
wild. That just
technology is so
seems
different.
like an unsolvable problem, but I guess not.
Yeah, there's accidents now that you watch where you're like, oh my God, is he dead? And then he stands up, he's like, hey, I'm good. What's up?
Huh.
How's it going? You're like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, still watching Formula One. The season's almost over. So it's getting into the like, who's going to win it all? Like, we're separated by 4 points kind of drama. Well, next time here on Commitment, if you're listening to this the week you came out, we might be taking a week off because Thanksgiving is coming up. But if you're not listening to this when this came out, that doesn't matter at all to you, because there's probably another episode waiting in your feed right now after this one. And in that one, we'll be returning to the Jim Henson Hour in July of 1989 to talk about the 6th episode called Monster Maker.
And this is like a movie about. This is not like a secret behind the scenes thing.
No,
Okay.
it seems to be a movie about essentially a guy working in a creature shop type place.
But their monsters become real, or they're alive, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's Harry Dean Stanton playing a
Oh.
guy who works in like a creature shop type of place.
Interesting. Okay.
But that's about as much as I know about it. Other than there is a character called the Ultra Gorgon, who is voiced by Michael Gambon, the second Dumbledore, and also the storyteller from the Greek myths episodes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm guessing maybe this is where he is introduced to Jim Henson. So yeah, that's all we will be watching next time as we make our journey through the Jim Henson Hour. And we will also be joined by writer David Mish, who, among other things, worked on Inner Tube, the original pilot for the Jim Henson Hour, and the script for the Muppets Take Manhattan. So we will talk to him about both of those, as well as, I'm sure, many other Muppet things. And next time here on the podcast.
Those are such crazy different projects.
That's what I'm most curious about, is how do you brain switch from writing Muppets Take Manhattan stuff to Inner Tube?
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll find out. So we got to thank our friend Tuna for making the music for this podcast, and Cassie Wilson for singing our theme song. Don't forget to go to commitment.com for all commitment needs, and rate and review this podcast while you're listening on any platform. Most of them have a rating. Some of them have comments. Some have reviews. Just say nice things about us.
Yes, please.
Tell your friends about it. Just be like, hey, 5 stars. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're like, oh, I was reviewing this podcast in my head right now, and I wanted to tell you about Commitment and why
As
it's so
I
good.
often do.
Yeah, you know how I, review podcasts out loud. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at mail@commitment.com, or we also have a contact form on our website, which some people use sometimes. You can follow us on social media at commitmentpod or at commitment.com on Blue Sky. And you can always follow me at Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.